sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.
All right, so it's Selection Sunday, and you know what that means. Brackets are out for both the men's and women's tournaments, and whoa, there are some head scratchers in here for sure.
Yeah, lots to unpack.
Right. We're going to dive into the biggest surprises, the snubs, the stuff that'll make you scream at the TV, all the storylines that make March Madness so good.
The good stuff.
And luckily, our friends over at Yahoo Sports, they've got some great analysis for us, including some takes from Jeff Eisenberg, so let's jump right in.
Let's do it.
Okay, first things first. SEC. What is going on? They are an absolute powerhouse.
It's wild.
14 of their 16 teams made it into the men's tournament. I mean, that's a record.
It is. It's unprecedented. It breaks the previous record of 11, which, by the way, was set by the Big East all the way back in 2011.
Ancient history.
So this tells us a couple things. First of all, it just means the SEC is insanely strong this year, top to bottom. They've got talent, they've got coaching, and I mean, their conference schedule, it's a gauntlet.
Oh, yeah. They're coming in battle-tested.
Yeah, they are. But second, it might make this year's bracket a little lopsided,
Well, yeah. I mean, think about it. If you're trying to fill out a bracket right now...
Who are you going to pick?
Exactly. Are you even considering going against an SEC team in those early rounds? I mean, is it just a race to see who can get the most SEC teams in their Final Four at this point?
Well, hold on. Let's not hand them the trophy just yet.
You're right.
But, I mean, Oman, it's tempting. You got to load up on those SEC teams, especially when you look at the number one seeds.
Oh, speaking of, we got Auburn grabbing the top spot in the South, Duke in the East, Houston, they're ruling the Midwest.
And don't forget Florida in the West.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Florida, the West. Were these the names you were expecting at the top?
I mean, no huge surprises there, although
Right.
I'm sure some people would say, like, Houston.
Yeah.
Their defense is just suffocating, and they've been so consistent.
Right.
Like, maybe they deserved that overall number one seed. But at the end of the day, all four of these teams, they've been powerhouses all season long.
Yeah. It's going to be a fun tournament. And actually, speaking of powerhouses, Florida's the betting favorite right now to win it all.
Interesting.
Does that line up with what Yahoo Sports is saying? Are they all in on the Gators?
Well, they're definitely acknowledging that Florida is strong. I mean, 30 wins, 4 losses. Hard to ignore that. And all 4 of those losses, they were against tough tournament teams. So they've proven that they can compete at the highest level.
Right.
But I wouldn't say Yahoo Sports is, like, crowning them as champions.
Yeah.
They're also giving Duke a lot of credit. They're bringing up their tournament history, which is pretty legendary. And then you got Auburn. Their offense is just explosive.
So even with Florida as the favorite, it sounds like anyone's game.
Yeah. This is March Madness, baby.
Exactly. Now, switching over to the women's side for a sec.
Yeah.
We got UCLA, South Carolina, Texas, and USC. They're our number one seeds in their respective regions. So what storylines are you most excited about over there?
Ooh, well, you can't talk about the women's tournament without talking about South Carolina, right?
Oh. No.
Defending champs.
Back for more.
Yeah, and they look like they could actually do it again. I mean, the talent, the experience, it's all there. Plus, the coach, Dawn Staley, she is a master strategist.
Yeah.
They are the team to beat.
Potentially a dynasty in the making.
I mean, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but...
I know. But what about upsets? Cinderellas?
Oh, always. Keep an eye on Creighton. They're a 10 seed, but their offense can be really high-powered, and they're not scared of anyone. If their three-point shooting is on, they could definitely make some noise.
Okay, officially adding Creighton to my watch list. All right, now let's talk about something that's been causing a lot of debate. North Carolina, they're in. Even though they went 1-12 against, like, the top-ranked teams in the country.
Right. It's what the NCAA calls Quadrant 1 teams.
Right. And that is why everyone is losing their minds. Because a lot of people feel like, okay, North Carolina, they got in based on their reputation. They're a blue blood program.
Yeah.
But their performance this season, not so much.
Not really.
And Jeff Eisenberg, who we mentioned earlier, he was super critical of this in his Yahoo Sports article. Like, he actually called North Carolina one of the biggest snubs of the year.
He did.
Even though they're in the tournament.
I need you to break this down for me. It feels like the selection committee is playing some kind of mind game here.
Okay, so the committee looks at a lot of things when they're evaluating teams. Obviously, the overall record, their strength of schedule, And then there's something called metrics.
Metrics.
Yeah, basically, these are these fancy statistical rankings that try to measure how good a team actually is.
Okay.
So you could have a team, maybe they don't have a fantastic record, but if their metrics are good, it can boost their chances.
So even with a so-so record, those metrics could, like, save you.
Yeah, potentially. But in North Carolina's case, it sounds like those metrics weren't even that impressive given their terrible record against top teams.
That's the thing. Their metrics weren't amazing.
Right.
And that 1-12 record against Quadrant 1 teams, that shows they really struggled when they were up against elite competition.
So is the message here, if you want to make the tournament, just load up your schedule with, like, the toughest teams, even if you know you're going to lose?
It's a good question. It's like the committee sending mixed signals.
Totally.
On the one hand, they want to reward teams who play tough schedules. Then they let in a team with a losing record against those tough teams. Like, it makes you wonder, does winning even matter anymore?
Does it? Yeah. I mean, it makes you think about the whole selection process. Like, how much weight should these metrics really have?
Right.
Compared to actual wins and losses, especially against the best teams out there?
Yeah, I don't know.
What do you think?
Well, I think it's a balancing act, and I don't think the committee always gets it right. I mean, in this case, I got to agree with Heisenberg.
Okay.
Putting North Carolina in, it feels like a snub.
To a more deserving team.
Right.
So what you're saying is, if you're a college basketball coach, just ignore the committee entirely. Focus on winning.
I wouldn't say it's that simple.
No.
But it's going to be debated for weeks, you know it. And it shows that the selection process, it needs to be more transparent, like a lot more transparent.
Yeah, people need to know what's going on. All right, so we're going to put the North Carolina controversy aside for now, but you know we're going to come back to it.
Oh, yeah.
As the tournament unfolds, because they're going to be a major storyline, whether they, make a run or totally flop.
Guaranteed.
Okay, let's dive into another interesting decision, courtesy of the selection committee. Michigan and Wisconsin.
Ooh, yeah. Little rivalry there.
They just faced off in the conference championship, right?
Good. And Michigan won?
Won. You would think that would give them, like, an edge, maybe a better seed.
You would think so, right?
Wrong.
Wisconsin actually got the higher seed, a 3 seed. Michigan's a 5.
Wait, hold on. So Michigan beat Wisconsin head-to-head championship game, and they get penalized with a lower seed. What is the logic here?
Well, so the committee, they say that the conference tournament, it's not everything. They look at a team's whole season, their body of work.
Okay.
And in this case, Wisconsin did have a slightly better overall record and, played slightly better against tougher opponents. So that's what they went with.
So the conference tournament doesn't really matter as much as they say it does.
It's hard to say.
Because if they're going to prioritize other factors over head-to-head matchups, especially like the championship, what's the point of even having a conference tournament?
Right, yeah.
Bragging rights. I mean, seriously.
It definitely makes you question how consistent their process is, It seems like they want to say these tournaments matter, but then
they don't.
Yeah. And that's frustrating for everyone, fans, analysts, and especially for the teams.
Totally.
Because they're the ones who are out there playing their hearts out, and they got to be wondering, did any of it actually matter?
Exactly. Okay, speaking of frustration, let's talk about Stanford, or rather the fact that Stanford is not there.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't get a bid for the women's tournament.
Crazy.
That ends a 36-year streak, second longest in history.
That's insane.
We were talking about a program like synonymous with women's college basketball excellence. 3 national championships, 14 Final Fours, some of the biggest names in the sport. So what happened? How did they fall so far?
Well, a couple of things. They graduated some key players, lost some to the WNBA, big hole in the roster. They also had some coaching changes, which can always be tricky. And, you got to factor in women's college basketball. It's just gotten so much more competitive overall.
Oh, yeah. It's not just about Stanford declining. It's about everyone else, stepping up. We're seeing way more parity in women's basketball now, which is amazing for the sport, but not so great for those traditional powerhouses who are used to just, strolling into the tournament.
Right.
The changing of the guard. Sad to see a dynasty fall, but it's also kind of exciting to see new contenders, shake things up.
Definitely. And that's why we love March Madness. It's full of surprises. Anything can happen. History doesn't guarantee you anything.
It really doesn't. Okay, so big question. Are you more or less confident in filling out your bracket after seeing all this, the snubs, the surprises, the utter randomness of it all? I'm leaning toward left confident right now.
Yeah, I hear you. The selection process is already unpredictable enough, and then you add all this stuff on top of it. Makes it tough to know who to pick. But hey, that's part of the fun, right?
Yeah, maybe.
It's March Madness. Embrace the chaos. Expect the unexpected.
Chaos it is. Now, let's take a closer look at those matchups, those potential Cinderella stories brewing in part 2, after a quick break.
Sounds good. All right, let's talk about those Cinderella stories. You know those underdog teams that make these, like, unbelievable runs in the tournament every year? It's the best.
The best. So who are you keeping an eye on this year? Any teams that are, like, screaming Cinderella to you?
Well, on the men's side, I'm kind of intrigued by Charleston. They're a 12 seed, but they play this really fun up-tempo style, and they got a couple of guys who can just light it up from outside, plus their coach, veteran, knows how to win in March.
A 12 seed, that'd be a good one. And, for those of us who maybe aren't as familiar with, like, all the mid-major conferences, what should we be looking for if we're trying to spot a Cinderella? Like, what are the telltale signs?
That's a great question. One thing I always look at is guard play, because guards, they're usually the playmakers, right? They control the tempo. They create those scoring opportunities for themselves and their teammates. A team with a couple of really dynamic guards, that can be really dangerous in a single elimination tournament like this.
So basically, if you see a team with a couple of, like, lightning fast guards who can handle the ball and shoot like crazy, put them on your upset alert list.
Exactly.
Got it.
Another thing I like to look at is defense. Because March Madness, it often comes down to these close, low-scoring games where, like, every possession is a battle. And a team with a really suffocating defense, they can just throw their opponent completely off, you know? Disrupt their rhythm, pull off an upset.
Yeah, makes sense. Defense wins championships, or at least gets you some upsets.
And there you go.
All right, so let's talk about those first-round matchups, the ones you're excited about. On the men's side, what jumps out?
Oh, so many good ones. But the one that I'm really looking forward to is the 8-9 matchup, Arkansas and San Diego State. They are so evenly matched.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, and they both play this really physical, defensive style. It's going to be a grind. Every possession is going to be a battle.
Oh, I like that. A real, like, back and forth.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes down to the wire.
Adding that one to my must-watch list. What about the women? Any first-round matchups that have you, like, on the edge of your seat?
You know, I'm really intrigued by that 5-12 matchup. Iowa State and Florida Gulf Coast. Now, Iowa State, they have one of the best players in the country, Ashley Jones. But Florida Gulf Coast, they're dangerous, man.
Yeah.
They love to shoot threes, push the pace. If they get hot from outside, they could definitely upset Iowa State.
Another potential Cinderella story.
Maybe.
Okay, so you mentioned Charleston earlier. They could be a sleeper on the men's side. Any other teams, like, flying under the radar that you think could make a run?
You know, I really like Drake. They're a 10 seed. But they're really balanced, strong inside-outside game, and they play great defense.
Oh, okay.
And they're battle-tested. They play in the Missouri Valley Conference, which is a tough conference. Don't sleep on the Bulldogs.
Okay, I'm seeing a trend here. Yeah. You like those, like, mid-major teams?
I do.
The ones with that chip on their shoulder.
You know me too well. I love those teams. They don't get the same kind of hype as the big programs, but they come in hungry. They're motivated.
Yeah, and those underdog stories, that's what makes March Madness so great.
Well,
now let's switch gears a little bit. Something that didn't get as much attention as the whole North Carolina thing, but it's still pretty significant. The UConn women. They're not a number 1 seed.
That is huge.
They're practically synonymous with women's college basketball. You know, more national championships than anyone. They're always in the mix for the top seed.
Yeah.
So to see them missing from that top line, I mean, that's a sign that things are changing, right?
Oh, absolutely. It shows you how much parity there is in women's college basketball these days. There are a lot of programs out there that are capable of challenging UConn.
I mean, they're still a 2 seed, so it's not like they've fallen off a cliff.
Right.
But it's a sign that it's not just the UConn show anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's great for the sport. More parity, more excitement, more upsets. It makes it more fun to watch.
For sure. Okay, so we've covered potential Cinderellas, some interesting first-round matchups, the changing landscape of women's basketball. But I want to circle back to something we talked about earlier, the selection process. Do you think it needs to be, like, totally reevaluated after all these, like, questionable decisions? North Carolina, Michigan, Wisconsin?
Yeah, I think there's definitely room for improvement. The committee needs to be more transparent about how they evaluate teams and how they make their decisions. Like, what are the specific metrics they're using? How much weight do they give to strength of schedule, conference tournaments, head-to-head matchups? I think the more transparent they are, the less speculation and controversy there's going to be.
Right. Because right now, it feels like we're all just guessing, trying to figure out, like, what their logic is.
It's true.
And it's not just us, the fans and the analysts, the coaches and players. They deserve better, too.
Oh, yeah. They're the ones out there putting in the work, playing all those games. They deserve a selection process that is fair and consistent and, understandable.
Totally. So what would you change? If you were in charge of the selection committee, what would you do differently?
Well, first of all, I'd make all those metrics public, let everyone see how the teams are being measured and ranked, and I would be really clear about how much weight each factor gets.
So more transparency, clearer criteria.
Got it. Yeah. And I would also consider giving more weight to head-to-head results, especially in conference tournaments. I mean, if two teams have similar records and similar metrics, but one team beats the other in the conference championship game, that should matter.
Right. You beat the team you're being compared to, like in the most important game of your conference season, and you get a worse seed. It makes no sense.
It sends mixed signals.
Right.
And it kind of makes those conference tournaments feel less important.
Yeah. I feel like we could talk about the selection process all day, but I think we've made our point.
We have.
More transparency, clearer criteria.
Yeah.
Okay, now back to something more fun, the potential for upsets. Cinderella runs. You've already highlighted a couple of teams to watch, but are there any other, dark horses lurking in the bracket that you think could really shake things up?
Ooh, I'm so glad you asked because I've got my eye on a couple more teams that I think could really make some noise. Let's start with the men's bracket. I think Furman, they have the potential to be this year's, giant killer. Yeah, they're a 13 seed, so no one's really talking about them.
Under the radar.
But they play this really disciplined, efficient style. They don't make a lot of mistakes. They shoot well. And their coach, he's like a tactical genius.
Okay.
And they're opening up against Virginia. And Virginia, slow, methodical.
Oh, yeah, they like to slow it down.
Exactly.
So you think Furman could pull off a classic David versus Goliath upset? Take down a powerhouse?
I mean, it's possible, right? They definitely have the tools to disrupt Virginia's game. And if they can hit their shots from outside,
watch out.
Upset City, anything can happen in March Madness.
That's the truth. Okay, Furman, officially on my upset alert list. What about the women's bracket? Any other dark horses besides Florida Gulf Coast?
Yeah, keep an eye on Princeton. They're an 11 seed, but man, they play tough, physical.
Princeton's always a tough out.
They've got a great defense. They rebound well. They're not afraid to, bang down low with the bigger teams. Their first-round matchup, it's Gonzaga. Gonzaga's a 6 seed, and they're talented for sure. But I would not be surprised to see Princeton pull off the upset.
No, I wouldn't either. They're scrappy.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got Furman on the men's side, Princeton on the women's side, both potential Cinderellas. So big picture, overall predictions. Do you see a clear favorite in either bracket? Or is it just wide open this year?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
There are some teams that, really stand out as favorites, but there's also a lot of parity, especially in the men's bracket. For the men, I think Duke's the team to beat.
Duke?
Yeah, I think so. The talent, the experience, the coaching, it's all there.
They've been good all year.
But, wouldn't count out Florida or Auburn or Houston. Those top seeds are all dangerous.
It's interesting you say Duke because, I don't know, they're almost flying under the radar a bit after that loss to North Carolina in the ACC tournament.
Yeah, but that might make them even more dangerous.
How's...
Because they're going to be motivated to prove everyone wrong, right? They want to show everyone they're still the best team in the country, and they have the talent to do it.
That's true.
Great mix of veterans and young players, and Coach Shire, he's got them playing well.
Okay, so Duke for the men. What about the women? Who's your pick?
I'm sticking with South Carolina.
The defending champs.
They haven't slowed down at all. They're dominant inside. They play great defense. And, their coach is phenomenal. I think they're going to be really tough to beat.
Yeah, and I feel like we're going to see a lot of SEC teams making deep runs, both men's and women's.
Yeah, the SEC is just so strong this year. I wouldn't be surprised at all.
All right, so before we wrap things up, I want to go back to our listener who's probably scrambling to finalize their bracket right now.
Yeah.
Given everything we've talked about, the snubs, the surprises, how unpredictable everything is, any final words of wisdom? Any advice for our bracket-filling friends out there?
Well, trust your gut. Don't be afraid to pick some upsets. And most importantly, enjoy the madness. It's a tournament unlike any other. full of excitement, drama. You're going to see moments that you'll never forget. Embrace the chaos, savor every buzzer beater, and just remember, hey, there's no shame in having a busted bracket.
That is a great point. And if you want even more analysis, make sure to check out those Yahoo Sports articles. We'll link to them in the episode description. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Absolutely. Enjoy the tournament, everyone.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have a ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're bubbly